Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Cinnamon Stitches. I am your yarn host Jennifer. Today it's PYOW Day, otherwise known as Premier Yarn of the Week. That's what PYOW stands for in case you're new here. Alright, every Thursday we have just started this where we start to showcase a yarn from Premier Yarns because that is my favorite yarn company. And this week we're going very basic. We're just showing the Premier Basic. Oh look, it even matches my dress. Cute. Anyway, this is the Premier Basics. Premier has two main lines, in my opinion, two main lines of yarn that they feature. They have the Basics, which is the basic acrylic. It is what a lot of people, what I would consider a value acrylic. It's a very good price. It's a very good price point for how much you get. This one is 359 yards, but as you have seen 2 weeks ago, they also have other varieties of the Premier Basics. I mean, they have a lot of different varieties. So they have the Premier Basics, but they also have the Premier Anti-Pilling Acrylic, which is their everyday line. This week, instead of just showing you the yarn and working up a sample, because we've seen the Premier Basics on this channel, I worked up samples before. I will, of course, post those videos below for you. This one is the color Lilac, which is kind of funny because this is the color I actually worked with today, but I had 3 balls of this, but they were 2 different colors, so I'm guessing different dye lots. But this one also feels differently than the other one, so I don't know what happened there, but it's fine. It's fine. Now, as you may have seen on the channel before, this was the prototype. I made a beautiful winged shawl. I made this with yarn from another yarn company, and everyone liked it so much I did not intend on making one for the channel, but then I decided, because I really enjoyed the pattern of that, I didn't enjoy working with really small yarn. However, it turned out beautiful small yarn, but I liked it much better in like a worsted. I made this one out of just variety of white cakes. I just took my white scraps. I had what I call a magic cake of white scraps. So different shades, different textures of white yarn, and I made this one. This one was a huge hit and everyone was begging me at that point, can you please show us how to make that one? So this will be, today's tutorial is for what I'm calling the Phoenix Shawl. The reason I call it the Phoenix Shawl is because of that first one I made, the Phoenix rising from the ashes. It looks like it has wings. So, in today's tutorial, I am making this beautiful thing that I just finished last night. It is almost identical to the white one. I did make some small minor changes, but I also tell you in the tutorial how to make your own changes. And that is what it looks like. We still have the winged peaks. I have not washed and blocked this one like I did, although you don't have to block it. Washing it will just loosen up the stitches enough to give you those beautiful open peaks like that. I just haven't washed this yet because I just finished it last night. However, this is absolutely beautiful. It is very, very large. I am 5'8"-ish, so my wingspan is about 5'8", 5'9", because I used to be 5'9", but I have shrunk. I don't know if your arms shrink or just your height. So it's probably close to 6 feet long. And it is definitely big enough for us bigger bodies. And it matches my dress and it's so pretty. So, this is what we're making today with our Premier Basics yarn. I used 2 balls in the color Lilac, which I will show you at the end of the video, minus about this much. Because when you get to the end, because we're making peaks, those bottom rows are so long that this was not enough to finish a full row, so I had to frog it back. And then I added about, I'm going to say over half of the color Eggplant. So if you want the same 2 colors, you're going to need 2 Lilac and 1 Eggplant to create a purpley one. Although this lilac leans more pink, whereas this one leans more purple, and it is the same, it's both lilac. So that's why I didn't use 3 of these. But also adding an alternate color really makes those peaks pop. which also is what happened on the white one because I ran out of the cream color I added white. It made the peaks pop a little bit more. So get yourself 3 balls of the Premier Basics. I used a 7mm hook for this, and let's get started. If you don't have a 7mm hook, because 7mm hook's kind of a weird size, you can use 6.5, you can use 8. You could probably go even bigger. You'll get bigger holes, bigger drape, which is fine. That's why I used a 7, because anything smaller is you're gonna have tighter stitches. It's gonna be less drapey. But let's make the Phoenix shawl together. Let's go down to the table. All right, so let's get started. The yarn that we're using for this tutorial is the Premier Basics. I have the color Lilac, and I actually have 3 balls of this on hand, but one of them is a totally different color and feel to the yarn, so I'm just gonna start with 2, and if I need a different color, I do have different color purples that I could use in, but the Lilac, the 3rd ball that I have, is not even, it doesn't feel the same, which is really strange to me. So yeah, I have 2 balls on hand right now. I may need a 3rd, I'm not sure. This shawl is entirely customizable. You can use any weight of yarn that you prefer, and you can make it as big or as small as you want. You can make it small like the first Phoenix shawl that I made, the yellow one that I showed you, or you could make it large like the second one that I showed you, the really big white one. I'm using a 7mm hook today. You don't need a 7mm hook. This recommends 5.5mm, but I want more of a drapey feel. And this yarn tends to be thick, fluffy, and can be dense at times. And so that's why I went up to a 7mm hook. Now the construction of this shawl is a little bit different from most other shawls I've actually seen on the market right now. We're going to start with a slip knot. Okay. I'll bring you just a little bit closer. And we're going to start with a chain of 27. So what we're really looking for is a chain of 24 plus the 3 as our turning chain. So this is going to be a multiple of 6, but there's going to be times where we work in extra stitches to make it even on both sides. We're not really super counting, and we're not keeping track. This is very much a very typical pattern for me that I play with it as I go along, and sometimes I change it randomly, and I encourage you to do the same. So I give you the recipe, and I want you to customize it to make it your own. So we're going to chain 27. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Now what we are going to do here is this is going to be the top of our shawl, but it's going to give us an open V. So the top of the shawl is going to start off with a V. We ain't even got to do nothing special for that. Well, we kind of do. We have to, in the center, we have to put stitches, but it'll be fine. So we're going to go to the 1, 2, 3, the 4th chain from the hook, put a double crochet. So that counts as 2 double crochets. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and in the 12th stitch we are going to do double crochet, chain 2, and then the next one double crochet. So That is going to be the peak. We're going to have this side and this side. I'm going to double crochet all the way up here. And 11 and 12. We should have 12 on either side. I have an extra chain here, so I'm just going to fudge it. There. Now you should have an even amount. You should have 12 on this side and 12 on this side. You should be able to fold it in half at the increase, and it should be the same size. We're good to go. We're going to do one more row of double crochet. So we're going to start this row with a chain 3, and we are going to, because we want this to look like wings, so we want this to not only increase up this way, we want it to kind of fold a little bit like that. So at the beginning and the end of every row, we are going to put a 3 stitch increase. So in every beginning row, so because we're doing mostly double crochets to create the stitches, every row should start and end in 3 double crochet. So because I chained 3, that's the first double crochet. Then I put 2 more double crochets in that very first stitch. So it looks like that. And then we're going to double crochet all the way across. And eventually, as we work this pattern, the wings will start to form. We're just double crocheting across. My hook is brand new and I have not used it yet, and it's a little bit sticky, so I think I might have to go rub it with some cotton. These hooks, when they're manufactured, they get a little bit sticky, and so sometimes I have to come through and just polish them, but they do smooth out with use. So, goodness. Sometimes I hear noise in the background of my videos. I'm like, I wonder if you guys can hear that. Because just directly in front of me is my window to outside. And there's a big, beautiful red cardinal on the bird feeder. And he's making a chip, chip, chip noise. And then when we get to the center chain 2 space, we're going to put a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. That's our peak increase. Then we're going to double crochet up the other side. The next row, we're going to change it up a little bit. I like the Premier Basics yarn because there's not a lot of what you call value acrylics on the market that I can use because of my skin conditions, and Basix is one of, and it's a really good price. I believe it's either $2.99 or $3.99 for this big ball. And I've done comparison videos. Now we're down to the last 2 stitches. I've done comparison videos on Premier Basics versus other value yarns, in case you want to check that out. So we got this last one here, put a double crochet, but now we have this last, this is where our chain 3 was. So we're going to put 3 double crochets in this chain, this set of chains. 1, 2, 3. So that gives us our end of the row increase. And this is what it looks like so far. See how the end of the row doesn't just go straight, it kind of starts to want to curl. And the more we go, the more this is going to want to curl a little bit. So, next row is going to be, let me check my notes. Yeah, we're going to chain 3. Now we're going to change it up. And 1, 2, and 3. We're still going to do our 2 more double crochets in this first stitch, because that gives us our increase, but this is also technically a granny block. So we're making granny stitches for this row. So we are going to chain 1 and skip 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th, we are going to, if I can get it to stay on the hook, we're going to put 3 double crochets in that same stitch. Chain 1, 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th, put another granny block, which is 3 double crochets in 1 stitch, 2 and 3, chain 1, skip the next 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th, we're going to put another granny block, 1, 2, 3, we're going to chain 1, and now in this chain 2 space, we're going to put a granny corner increase. So we're going to put a granny square, or a granny block, which is 3 double crochet, 2, 3, chain 2, and then put 3 more double crochet in that same space. 2, 2, 3, chain 1. Now, skip 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th, and put a granny block. 1, 2, 3 double crochets in the same stitch. Chain 1, skip 3 in the 4th, put a granny block. And when you're doing this pattern, you just want to make sure that on either side of the wing, if you will, you have the same number of stitches, or for this instance, granny blocks. Skip 3 and in the 4th, put a granny block, 2, 3, chain 1, and then that very last chain 3, we're going to put another granny block. 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 3, and turn our work. This is what it looks like. So you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 granny blocks on either side of the chain 2 space here. And then it's an even thing. We're good to go. We can move on to the next step. For the next 2 rows, we're going to repeat the granny stitch row. However, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you want to make several more rows than just 2 rows of the granny, you go right ahead. This is where the crochet pattern is going to be yours and yours alone. You can make, follow me, I'm making 2 more rows of granny, or you can make 6 rows of granny, doesn't matter to me. But they're all going to look exactly like this. I'm going to start off with a granny block, which is 3 double crochets in the first stitch. So the chain 3 and 2 more grannies. I'm going to chain 1, and in the chain space here, we're going to put a granny stitch, 3 double crochets, chain 1, next space, we're going to do it again, granny, granny, granny. I think granny blocks are like the funnest thing to do. Next chain space, another granny block. Oh, chain! Don't forget to chain 1 in between your granny squares. I like granny stitch. I think it's probably one of my favorite to do because it's mindless. I don't have to look at my hands when I'm doing it, so it's really easy to do in the car because I can just feel where the next hole is and just go for that. This is a very good pattern for when you're in the car or you want to watch TV and actually look at the TV instead of listening to the TV, you know. Now we got down to the corner, so we're going to do granny block, chain 2, granny block. Chain 2, granny block. Chain 1, now we're going back up the other side. 2, 3, chain 1, another granny block. Should have brought something to drink in here. I have a frog in my throat. So just keep on doing that up the side. Granny block, chain 1, granny block. And then when you get to the end of your row, goodness, chain 1, the end, that chain 3 in the first of the row. I'm going to put our little magic wand in there and put a granny block. Oops. 2, 3. You know, this yarn's not super slippery. I don't know why I keep slipping out. Now we're going to chain 3, 2, and 3. We're going to turn our work and do another exact row of that. An exact replica. Yeah, I'm glad I used a 7mm hook for this because I can feel that it's soft and squish instead of more of a dense fabric. If you were to make like a baby blanket or a lapgan or even a full-size blanket with this yarn, and I'm going to talk because I just showed you exactly what to do for this last row. I'm just doing that again. Granny block, chain 1, granny block, chain 1, granny block. Okay. If you wanted to make like a denser, warmer blanket or whatever garment you're going to make with this, just use a smaller hook. But that's why I used a bigger hook, because I wanted it to have a little more looseness, drapiness, because I am approaching summer here where I live. And I don't want something that's too hot on me. And I wanted something like, I didn't want a dense fabric for a shawl. You never want like a dense, heavy shawl. So I'm just repeating exactly what I did the last row is granny block, chain 1, granny block. Oops. Sometimes when I get going too fast, I do exactly what I keep doing. I keep missing stitches. Now we got to the corner. We're going to do granny block, chain 2, granny block. Three. Going up the other side. I do apologize if I keep clearing my throat or I sound like a man. Chain 1. For those of you that have been with me for some time, you will know that my son, little man, has just recently started riding the bus home from school, which is like a big deal for us. And I was actually excited to start this tutorial today because I don't have to stop because I have to go sit in parent pickup line because I have an extra 2 hours of my day to do whatever I want, to do a tutorial if I so choose. This is the first tutorial since him being on the bus in the afternoon, and now we're in the last stitch here. And we are going to put our last granny block. 2 and 3. Now I'm gonna change up. However, if you want to continue with grannies for a couple more rows, you absolutely can do that. So see how, because we're doing granny and the granny stitch is not as much of an increase, this isn't curving up as much, it's kind of plateauing off. But that will change in further rows, because further rows are not going to be granny stitches. So we're going to change up. As it changes, it will start to go straight, and then it will curve, and then it will go straight, and then it will curve. And it's the way that the construction of this shawl is. So we got to the end of the row. We're going to chain 1, 2, and 3 and turn our work. Now I'm going to do a row. Actually, I think I'm going to do... All right. Our next row is going to be totally changed up. We're going to start and end each row with 3 double crochet. So the chain 3 starts as 1, then we had another double crochet, and another one we have 3. Now we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the next stitch and put a double crochet. We're going to do this across. We're going to chain 1. I'm going to skip 1. So now our skip 1 is the chain 1 space, and we're going to put a double crochet here. And we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip 1. And the pattern of this is going to be pretty much, if you really look at this, you're going to put a double crochet in the first stitch of the granny block, chain space, and then in the last, we're going to skip the chain space here. So every granny block, you will have a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the last chain. And it's just that's just how it works out with this pattern. And it's kind of easy to remember, so that you're not having to really count the stitches and look at them, because you know that you need to put a stitch in the first and the last of the granny block and have chain 1s in between all of that. And this is good for people who have a hard time with stitch recognition. If you have a hard time recognizing what your stitches look like, this makes it just a little bit easier, because you know that at the beginning and the end of the granny block, you're putting a stitch. Chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Whoops. Now when we get here, chain 1, we're going to double crochet in the third one. But now, here's where it gets complicated. We're now in the corner. So because we have a stitch right here, we're going to put 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet instead of the full granny stitch, because this one's going to kind of act like a granny stitch. So we'll put 2 double crochet in the chain 2 space. See how it looks like there's a granny stitch there? Chain 2. We're going to put 2 more double crochet in the same chain 2 space. Don't chain anything right here. And then in this block, make sure in the first stitch right there, you get your double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1, and we'll go back to our regularly scheduled pattern. Chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, exactly like we did on the other side. We're doing the first and the last stitch of the granny block. Sometimes when I talk, I'm like, okay, I hope that made sense to someone. That's why we do video instead of writing patterns, because it is exceedingly difficult to explain to someone or give tips in patterns that help make it easier for beginners. Or sometimes I teach tricks to new tricks to the old dogs, the ones that have been crocheting for 40 years. Sometimes, once in a while, I come up with a gem, and people go, "Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's awesome." And then we're at the last. This is the beginning of the row, or the end of the row, if you will. Double crochet, chain 1. Now remember, that first one is going to be a granny, so we need 3 double crochet in that last stitch. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to chain 3, And turn our work. This is what that row should look like. Pull you up a little bit. And there we have the different stitches. Now, we are going to do, let me see, how many rows do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to do 6 rows exactly like that last row. So, and again, if you don't want it to be 6 rows, you can change it. This is your shawl. Make it however you want it. You can change up. It's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. It's just going to give you a better look of that. If you really enjoy one of these sections, then stick with it longer. If you really don't like it, you can make it shorter and change to the next stitches. It's not a big deal. So now, once again, we're putting the increase. So we need 3 double crochets, or the equivalent of in the very first stitch. We're going to chain 1 once again. Now we're going to skip this next one and we're going to go into this stitch. See? Now, because we're in here and we're going to follow along, we're going to go chain 1, double crochet in the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the double crochet, all the way till the end. Chain 1, double crochet. And this gives it a really cool, I think of it when I do this pattern, it kind of looks like lattice in a garden, like a lattice thing that wild roses or whatever would grow up along. A trellis, if you will. A fence, a beautiful fence. But when I crochet, I always go back to, because I really love gardening, I love flowers. I always feel like the crochet and the gardening go hand in hand in my brain or in my imagination. So when I'm crocheting something like this, I always take it to the level of what would that look like if it was in a garden. I just picture beautiful flowers, especially because my mom had a beautiful, we lived in the middle of the ghetto. We lived in a really, really rough neighborhood, but our yard was like immaculate. It was beautiful. She really took time to take care of the yard and make the house as presentable as possible, even though it was falling apart. And we had a we had a big porch, and they used, hang on, I'll get back to that in a second. See, now we got to the corner, so now we're going to do the chain 1, and we're going to put our stitch here because that is the pattern we've done. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to do just like we did in the last row, because our double crochet is going to fall right there. When we get into the chain 2 space for here, we're going to do 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and then put the double crochet here, and then proceed with the pattern. Okay, so we're going to do 2 double crochet in the chain 2 space, chain 2, 2 double crochet in the chain 2 space, don't chain, and instead in the very next double crochet put your 3rd double crochet. Then we're going to chain 1 and go back to the pattern of double crochet, chain 1 and double crochet in the top of this. Like I said, we're going to do this for 6 rows. So back to my childhood home. They used lattice to board up, well, not board up, but they put it all around the front porch so that we had privacy when we were sitting on the front porch. And next to the front porch was this gorgeous, huge lilac bush. And it smelled so good in the springtime when it bloomed. My mom would sometimes open the windows and it would just waft through the house. And that's what this reminds me of. So we're just going to continue with the pattern. I'm going to get to the end of the row and I'm going to pause and we're going to catch up to those 6 rows. And I'm going to let you do your work. I'm going to do mine. And then we'll come back and we'll look at the next set of stitches. But you got this. This is super easy. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the top. And if you get confused, you can just rewind and listen to my lilac story again while we talk about what we did. So we got to the last granny block of the row. We're going to double crochet, chain 1, and in that very first stitch, put a granny block. 1 and 2 and 3. Then we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. This is what it looks like. We're going to turn our work, and we're going to repeat that for 4 more rows. So granny block, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. You got it. I will meet you at the end of row 6. All right, so this is where we are. I put 6 rows of the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. This is what it should look like at this point. Beautiful. Now we're going to go back to the granny square or the granny block. And then we're going to do, I keep looking back at my shawl. So if you hear the tone of my voice change, it's because I'm looking backward at the shawl that is beside me because I'm trying to keep track. So we're going to do 2 rows of, we're going to go back to the granny block. So we're going to do 2 rows of the granny block. So to start, we're going to chain 1, 2, 3. Let me pull you in closer so you're not straining. Turn our work. And as per always, we're going to put a granny block in the first stitch. So 3 double crochet, chain 1. And then we are going to, because the granny block takes up 3 stitches, we are going to skip the next 3. So 1, 2, the chain 1 counts as a 3. And in this post, this double crochet, we are going to put another granny stitch. So 3 double crochets. Oops. Chain 1. Skip the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, 3. And in this block, we're going to put a granny. 2, 3. Chain 1. Skip 1, 2, 3. And in the 4th. So every other post, we're going to put a granny block. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1. Skip this block and go into this block. Or a block. It ain't a block, it's a double crochet. 2, 3. Chain 1. Skip this double crochet and go into that double crochet. And put another granny block. 2, 3. Chain 1. Skip this one, go into this double crochet. Chain 1. Surprised how fast this is going. Seems like we're making really good progress in a short amount of time. Whoop. I always feel that way at the beginning of a shawl though, because the rows are so short. And I'm like, oh, I'm cruising. And then the further down on the shawl you get, I'm like, oh, this is taking a long time. Because the rows get longer every row. Goodness. Just continuing on. Doing our granny blocks in every other double crochet. Chain 1 in between. I actually brought myself a beverage this time. Keep my throat lubricated. Now we are getting to the part where we're approaching the corner. And depending on how many rows you did will depend because like I said, this is completely customizable. You didn't have to do 6 rows here. This is what it looks like at my 6th row, but if you did a different amount of rows here, this might be a little different at this point, but don't, just go with the flow. Just don't stress. So once again, we need to skip 1, 2, 3. So now we're here. We're going to put a granny block. Chain 1. And then in the chain 2 space, we're going to put a granny block. So 3 double crochet. Chain 2. 3 double crochet. And whatever we did on the first side, we're going to chain 1 after that. Whatever we did here, we have to replicate here. So because we have the corner here, and we skip back 2, and there's a granny stitch, you have to replicate that on this side. So we're going to go to the first one of this very first granny block, and we're going to put a granny block. Because what we're doing now is we're mirroring this side. Whereas normally with a pattern, you would have 3 stitches in between here, and we don't. So then you would do 3 stitches here, but that didn't happen. So because of that, we just want to mirror what we did on this side. So because there's 2 in between the granny stitches, we're going to do 2 in between the granny stitches here. Okay? Easy peasy, rice and cheesy, very good. We got this. Now we'll go back to chain 1, skip this double crochet and go into this one and put a double crochet, because now we're back to just a normal pattern. Chain 1, skip this double crochet, go into this one. As long as you have the same amount of stitches on either side of the bottom peak, it will work out. And if you don't, you can fudge it. You can add some stitches here and there to make up. You could do the F word and frog it, but I tend not to frog it. I usually just fudge it. I use a totally different F word. Skip that double crochet, go into this one. And we're going to do one more row exactly like this row. But we're not going to have to do anything special on the edges because now these are granny stitches, so we know where to put our stitches. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be right here with you for the next row too. Oops. I wish this hook would stop sliding out. This hook got all warmed up, now it's slippery. Good gravy. Just keep on putting those granny blocks. So, how's the weather in your neck of the woods? Today, it is very, very gloomy. It's gray. I'm not sure if it's going to rain or not. It's not supposed to, but that doesn't mean anything. But it's going to be 77 degrees. And usually days like this, I would sit outside and just crochet on the porch or, you know. But that's all right. We're going to do this tutorial. And I still have my beautiful window to look out and watch the birds at the bird feeder that I just filled up yesterday. It's nice and quiet in my neighborhood currently, which I can totally appreciate. I can't even hear the wind chime at this point. Now we're back to the beginning. 2, whoops, and 3. Good Lord. All right. Chain 1. And because this is just a granny block right here, we're just going to go into that very first stitch here and put a granny block. 1, 2, 3. We are going to chain 3, turn our work. That's what that row should look like. Now, you guys know how to do the granny block. I know this. This part's easy. We'll put a granny in the very first, so 2 more double crochet where we chain 3, chain 1, and in each chain space, you guessed it, put a granny block. 2 and 3, chain 1. Chain 1. Yeah, I like the way this shawl is feeling in my hand. It's got the squish factor happening. Chain 1. We're going. Gosh, even the dogs are quiet today. When there's so much noise in the house all the time, like when it's quiet, it's almost uncomfortable. Anybody else feel that way? The quiet is just uncomfortable. I almost always have the TV or the radio, or, well, I don't use a radio per se, but music. I usually have something going on in the background. When I'm doing a tutorial, it's like silence. Take a drink real quick. And proceed to crochet. When I turn this corner, I'm going to pause and catch up to the end of the row. And I'll meet you back here, but I wanted to show you the corner first, because it's easy. And I don't want you to get confused because of the way we had to do the last row. So right here, see, we're just doing it like we did every other, this is just like every other granny shawl. The granny rows. So we got to the corner, we'll just do granny, chain 2, granny. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, granny, chain 1. Then we're going to go up this next row exactly like we did. Well, not the next row. We're going to go up this side exactly like we did that. I will meet you at the end because we're going to change stitches again. All right, we got to the end of that little granny row, our second granny row. Now we are going to do a row of just double crochets. Actually, we're going to do 2 rows of double crochets. So I'm going to show you this first row. You repeat it twice. And actually, every single one of these rows, I keep saying this, you can do 2 rows, you can do 3 rows, you can do 5 rows, do 10 rows if you want like a big solid like section in there. Does not matter. This is just what I did. This is what I wrote down. This is what worked for me. We're going to chain 3, turn our work. And then we are going to double crochet in every stitch across, but we're going to start off with that 3 double crochet increase, otherwise known as a granny block, in the beginning, because that's what we do. Now, in every stitch and every chain, you are going to put a double crochet. So every granny block will get the 3 double crochets across the top, put one in the center where you chained. Don't forget that one. That one's important. And then in the top of the granny, you put a double crochet in all 3 of those stitches. 3, Here's the fourth, or no, that's not the fourth, that's the third. And then the fourth one goes in the chain space. Okay. Just double crochet in every single stitch and chain all the way down. And we're going to do this for 2 rows. So don't forget, you need 3 here to start the row and 3 in the end to finish the row. And when we get to the corner, we're just going to put a granny increase like we have been this whole time. You guys got this. You guys got this. I'm going to crochet you up to the end where, not the end, I'm not going to go to the end. I'm going to go to the corner. And then don't forget to put your 3 double crochet in the last stitch like we did in the first stitch. I'm going to make sure we have even stitches on both sides. I like the idea of this shawl and the simplicity of it. I like that you can alter how many stitches or how many rows of each stitch you want to use. Like if you really like using granny, you can just use granny for this whole thing if you wanted. If you really liked the double crochet, chain 1 double crochet, you could do that for the whole shawl. It doesn't matter. But for me, I get bored really easily. And so changing stitches like this frequently, especially if I'm using a solid color yarn, is very important to stimulate my brain so that I don't quit because I'm bored. Because that's what happens with me. I need constant stimulation in my brain. That's what it should look like so far. I'm going to get us up to the corner. And like I said, I'm going to do this 2 rows exactly like this. The next row is a lot easier because you're literally just putting a double crochet in the top of every chain or every double crochet from the previous row. Whereas this one, you got to also remember to go in those chains. Almost to the corner. So we're putting 1 in every one of those of the corner. So 2 and 3. Now that we're in the corner, we're just going to put another granny increase. So we're going to do 3 double crochet. Oops. Chain 2, 3 double crochet, make sure you get all 3 of the stitches of the next block. Continue this all the way up, just like you did that side. Don't forget that very first stitch needs 3 double crochet. Then do the next row exactly the same. And when you do the next row, you're going to do exactly like you did here. You're going to go double crochet, double crochet, double crochet, granny increase. All right, I will meet you at the end of the next row. All right, we're back. We're back from another set of rows. All right, so this is what it looks like now. So we got our double crochet, chain 1 double crochet, grannies, solid double crochet. We got a nice deep peak right here. And our top is starting to curve up, which is what we want. Although apparently I'm losing stitches here. The birds are going crazy on the bird feeder. They finally realized I've filled it up. I lost a stitch here. I'll put that back in. And then the next row is going to be a setup row for another section of granny stitches. So we're going to chain 3, turn our work as per normal. We're going to put our 2 more double crochets in the beginning of the row, because we like we like the curve that this is creating. See, instead of just straight out, it's curving. And then from here, we are going to do a row of double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And then the next row is going to be granny stitches. So if you already know how to do that, you guys can go ahead and skip ahead of me. For those of you who are confused or like, what the heck is she doing? Why is she doing all these different rows? Because it's fun. All right, so we're going to chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. This is just going to be a setup row to get back to the granny stitches. For no other reason than it looks pretty wow. I like doing lots of different. It really makes the eye draw across the entire garment when you keep switching up like this. Now, of course, if you didn't want to go back to the granny, you can stick with the chain 1, skip 1 row. You can do several rows of this if you want. But after this row, we're going to work our double crochet or our granny stitches back in, and then we're going to stick with the granny stitches for 9 rows. So that'll give us a good big section where we're not changing up and changing up and changing up. Now, when I was creating this shawl, I had no intention of making it a crochet tutorial or a pattern. So I wasn't thinking about ease of use or ease of making it for anyone else. I was just making it for myself and for the joy of it. But because so many of you had requested this be a tutorial, that's why we have a tutorial. And I honestly don't mind making another one of these. I had a lot of fun making the first 2 shawls, so I have no problem making a third one. So we're just doing double crochet, chain 1, skip 1. We've already done that down here, so we know what we're doing. So we don't need a lot of instruction. Just continue on. However, when we get to the peak down here, we are not going to do a granny increase at the peak for this row. And I'll show you that when we get to it. Double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. I must have scared the birds off. They all disappeared. Because what you guys don't see is when I'm doing like a section to where I don't have to sit at this desk, I go sit on the couch, watch a little bit of the Johnny Depp trial, and then come back to my desk and film, and then go back to the couch. So I came in here and I scared them. Okay, so now we're at the end. So we're going to go skip 1. We're going to go into this last one here, put a double crochet. And then in the chain 2 space, we're going to do double crochet, chain 2, double crochet. And then in that very first double crochet, we're going to put a stitch. And then go back to pattern, chain 1, skip 1, chain 1, skip 1. Oops. And then that's what the corner should look like. Then we're going to proceed on. chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. I sat last night with the kids and watched a movie from, well, the movie was created before my time, but it's a movie that I really liked from my childhood. We watched the original Peach Dragon. The movie's so good. I remember watching it when I was little. I wanted a dragon to come and whisk me away to a different land so bad. I think that's why I like the movie. My kids don't really like it. And I said, well, maybe that's why you don't like it, because you guys have a good life. And you don't dream of dragons coming and taking you away. And so now, like, Disneyland is celebrating the 50th anniversary for their Main Street Electrical Parade, which I love. And they have an Elliot, which is Peach Dragon. They have an Elliot popcorn bucket that lights up, and I want it so bad. I want it so bad. But I'm not going to California anytime soon to get it. But that's what preempted me to watch Peach Dragon with the kids, because I was like, I miss Elliot. I miss watching that movie. I watched it a lot when I was a little kid. There was a scene, though, on TV that I was watching. It was the beginning of the movie, and I was like, I don't remember this from when I was little. I don't remember this at all. So I don't know if it was a part that got cut and they put back in the movie or what. Or I just don't remember that part, which is possible. All right, we are almost to the end of this row. I'm going to show you how to do the first couple of granny stitches. And then, since you guys have already done so many granny stitch rows, you know how to do this. 9 rows of granny stitch after this. 9 rows. And then I will, of course, meet you back here to show you what's next. I can't wait to get to the part where we do the actual, what I call the flight feathers of the shawl. It's my favorite part. All right. Chain 1, go into the very first chain 3 space. If I can get in there. Put 3 double crochets. Chain 3. That's what our row looks like. All right, we're going to turn our work. And I'm about I'm about halfway through the first skein of yarn. So we're doing good. We're doing good. Now, I'm going to put a granny in the very first stitch like per always. Chain 1. Then we're going to do like we have done in the previous rows, where we skip 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th we put a granny. 2, 3, chain 1, skip this one, granny, skip this one, granny, skip this one, granny, and so forth. We're going back to the granny increases here. So in our chain 2 space, put a granny. Do that for 9 rows. You got this. I will meet you back, and we'll move on to the next part. All right, we are back. This is what we have so far. Last I left you off, we were here. I made my 9 full rows of granny. We're going to start the next section of rows, which is straight double crochet. So if you know how to do the straight double crochet, you can go ahead and skip ahead. I'm just going to give you a refresher. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 3 at the start of the row. Put 2 more double crochets in that very first stitch. And then we're just going to put a double crochet in every stitch Don't forget our chain space. Put a double crochet there. All the way across the rows. We're going to do 2 rows like this. So double crochet and double crochet. Just keep on double crocheting. Let me get this out of the way so we can actually see what I'm working on. There we go. I'm all tangled up. I am also getting ready to change skeins. I'm going to have to add on my second skein of yarn in just a few moments. We're just going to do double crochets across this row, and we're going to do double crochets the next row as well. So if you recall, when we were doing the double crochet row, I believe we did the, yeah, we're gonna do the corner, the point at the bottom. We're gonna do it different this row than we did last time. We're not gonna do the granny increase. So we're gonna do double crochets all the way to the end of the row. Our shawl is getting a pretty good size now, so the rows are taking a lot longer. So I am going to do a little jump cut. You continue making your double crochets, and I will see you at the peak. So I'm approaching the corner. Like I said, we're going to do this one different. We're not going to put the granny increase on that square. Instead, we're just going to do a double crochet, chain 2, a double crochet, so we're not adding too much extra bulk there. And then we're just going to continue on around with the double crocheting in every stitch and every chain. And don't forget, at the end you need to put your increase of 3 double crochets in the last stitch. You're going to do one more row exactly like this. So 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet in the peak, the 3 double crochets in the beginning of the beginning and the end stitches of the row. So we're going to have another whole row of double crochet, and I will meet you at the end of the second row of double crochet, and we will go from there. All right, so I have my 2 rows of solid double crochet. Now we are going to start, this is going to be a series of setup rows to create the feathers, if you will, of the wing of the phoenix. And so what we're going to do next is setup rows. So these setup rows will help us to eventually get to form the peaks that are happening on our shawl. So we're going to chain 3 as per always. We're going to put our 3 double crochets for the increase. And this row is going to be a chain 1, skip 1 double crochet row like we've done in the past. So we chained 1, skipped 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet. This is a setup row. This is going to help us to set up the next row, which is also a setup row for the next row, and so on and so forth. So like I said, there's going to be a series of setup rows to get us to the point where we can make the peaks along the edge of the shawl. So this row is just going to be double crochet, chain 1, skip 1. And again, when we get down to the peak, we're going to do like we did the past 2 rows. We're going to just do 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet. And what we're doing now is we're creating less of a deep peak and more of a rounded peak by not adding as many increases in the peak. So just go through, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1. And then when you get to the peak in the chain 2 space, just do 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet in the same stitch, well, the chain 2 space. That is what that will look like right now. I will meet you at the peak. So we're approaching the peak. And we have 1 here. So we're going to put the double crochet there. We're still going to chain 1. Then we're going to put double crochet, chain 2, double crochet in the peak, chain 1, and then in the very first double crochet on the other side, we're going to double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet up this side. That is what that will look like. And see how it's more rounded and not as a severe of a peak like this row was? That's what we're doing. We're just making it less sharp and more rounded, more open with this row. So just continue with the double crochet, chain 1, skip 1 up this side, and then I will come back and show you what to do for the next setup row. All right, so that's our first setup row. Our next setup row, we're going to change stitches, but we're still going to do the chain 3, 2 more double crochet in the first and last stitches. We need 3 double crochets in the beginning and end of every row, just like we have. Now what we are going to do here is we're going to change this to V stitches, which we have not done V stitches up until this point. So V stitches are easy. We are going to chain 2, and then we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, and 4. Never mind what I just said. I just went back and looked at my stuff. Don't skip anything right now. So we're also not chaining. So our 3 double crochet. Sorry, I messed up. It's all right. It's all good. We'll do our 3 double crochets in the first stitch, no chains after that, and in the first chain space here we're going to put a V stitch. So that's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Now we're going to chain 2. Okay, so it should look like that, the first part of the row. Now because the V stitch consists of 1, 2, 3 stitches, and then we chain 2, so it's technically 5 stitches. So we need to skip 1, 2, 3, 4, and go into this one and put a double crochet or a V stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So see how that works. So we're going to skip every other chain space, put a V stitch, chain 2, skip this chain stitch, go into that one, and put another V stitch. So that's a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 2. I'm going to skip over this chain space and go into that one and do V stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then we're going to chain 2 after that. See, that's what we're building. I'm going to skip this one and go into this chain space. Another V stitch, chain 2. We're going to do this all the way down to the corner. Skip this chain space, do a V stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 2, skip here, go here, V stitch, chain 2. So that's what that should look like. We are going to go to the corner and I will show you what to do on the corner. All right, we are approaching the end. Chain 2, put my V stitch here. And then here is our corner. So we're going to chain 2. And then once again, we're going to put a double crochet, chain 2, oops, double crochet, good Lord, come on, chain 2, and because we want to mirror what we did on this side, we're going to go into that very next chain space right here, and we're going to put a V-stitch so it looks exactly like that side. And then we're going to continue the pattern up this side exactly the way we did that side. So now we skip this one and we work the double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into here. Oops. I have slipped out of this yarn, chain 2, more times today than I have in 2 years of crocheting. I've crocheted more than 2 years, but like in the past 2 years. V-stitch, chain 2, V-stitch, chain 2, skip, V-stitch, chain 2. Now, on my first try at this, the big white one that I showed you, I did several rows of this V-stitch pattern, and you absolutely could do that. I'll show you an example. See, I did several rows of the V-stitches, and I just worked the V-stitch inside the V-stitch exactly like we did the other rows. So you would work the V-stitch in top of the here inside the V-stitch. You guys can tell I'm getting tired. It's been a long day. I've been working on this tutorial for now about 8 hours. So V-stitch in top of the V-stitch, chain 2, V-stitch, top of the chain, and on and on. So you can do that. I did that for 1, 2, 3, 4 rows for this one. For this purple one, I'm only doing it for 1 row because that's why I tell you guys can change these patterns up. These patterns are so easily adjustable. If you want several rows of the V-stitch, you can just pause after this and make several rows of the V-stitch. You saw how beautiful it is. But for me, I want to get started on the feather part of the wings. And so that's what we're going to do next. So you can do it either way. You can do a repeat of this row 4 times or as many times as you want, quite honestly. And then move on to the next step where you can follow like I'm doing and just do 1 row, because the point of the V-stitch is I'm going to come back and I'm going to actually work shells into these. So if you want to do 4 rows of these, you can still do the 4 rows and then come back on the 5th row or the 4th row after the 4 rows of these, and then just follow along with what I do with the shells. And then we'll all be back on the same page. I always like to give you guys options in my tutorials and in patterns so that we're not all making the exact same thing. We can all customize it the way we want to. Nothing wrong with that. That's why I like to make very simple stitch patterns. I mean, as long as the stitches that you're using are the same general stitch count. Like I like to work in multiples of 2s. So anything that can be worked up into a multiple of 2. So 2, 4, 6, any of those stitches can be worked if your starting chain is a multiple of 6, which is what we did. Well, 4 doesn't go into a 6, but I mean, you can totally fudge it and make it work, which is what we do sometimes. And I like I said earlier, I like mixing up the stitches because it keeps my brain firing all its neurons. It keeps me happy. I'm almost to the end of my row. 1, 2. Then we'll start the shell. And the shell is also a setup row for the peaks. So it's a matter of using 3 setup rows to get the peaks that we want. And while it sounds complicated, it's really not. You could probably skip several of these setup rows and still form the peaks. And I know that you could, but I like the way this looks, so that's why we're doing it this way. Glad you guys are still hanging in there. This has been a long tutorial. It's been a long tutorial. I think it's a good way to feature this Basix yarn though, so you can see what beautiful projects that this yarn can make. Almost to the end. One, two, V-stitch. 1, 2, V-stitch, and we worked that out perfectly. Now remember, the first of the row we did not do a chain in between this V-stitch, right? Let me double check before I talk. No, we did not. So see, there's not a chain between the V-stitch and the increase. So again, we're not going to put an increase or a chain here. We're just going to skip on over here and put our 3 double crochets in the last stitch of the row. I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work, and I'm going to double check my notes to make sure what we have to do next. Because I'm pretty sure, yeah. We're still going to do a chain 3 here. So 1, 2, 3. We're still going to do our 3 double crochet increase, the first of the row. Now this is where we are going to work in. Let me flip the page of my book. Or take the page out entirely. Shells. This is where we work the shells. Alright. So we got our 3 shell. Well, this is technically a half a shell. But our 3 double crochets as we have been doing at the beginning of every row. Now this space between the last block and the V-stitch that's not a chain, we are going to put a single crochet right there. Okay, so that counts as a half a shell, a single crochet, and then in the V-stitch we're going to work a shell, which is 5 double crochets in the V-stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And in that chain 2 space, we're going to put a single crochet. Okay, so that's what that should look like. All right. We're going to continue that across. We're going to put a shell and a single crochet in the chain 2 space, and a shell and a single crochet. So every V-stitch will get a shell, which is 5 double crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the space in between the V-stitches, the chain 2 space, gets a single crochet. Okay, and just continue that on, and I will meet you at the peak to show you what to do next. All right, so we are approaching the corner, which is this stitch right here. So we have a V-stitch on this side and a V-stitch on that side. So we're still going to continue with the same pattern. Put a shell. So 5 double crochets in here. We're going to single crochet there. And in the peak, we're going to put 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be just like every other Then we'll come around here and put a single crochet in between and continue the pattern up the side. So we'll put 5 double crochets over here and continue exactly like we did. 3, 4, and 5. Single crochet. And we'll do this all the way up the side. And remember, the shells are a setup row for the peaks. So we got one more row to where I'm really going to show you, and then you guys can finish the shawl on your own. I'm so excited. I'll meet you at the end of this row. We are back at the end of the row. The V-stitch here, we're going to put another shell. So 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to put our single crochet here. And then we're going to go into that very first stitch and put our 3 double crochets. Now here is where it is going to get a little bit different, because now each one of these shells is going to become a triangle. And I know it sounds complicated. It's going to be fine. We're also going to continue increasings on the end here. And what it's going to do is it's going to create where it's going to curl around this way. Okay, so you're going to get a curl that way. It's going to be fine. It will be beautiful. That's one of my favorite details of this shawl. So we're going to continue with the chain 3, flip our work. We're still going to increase here. So there's 3 double crochets here. Now, we are going to decrease at the bottom of the shell, and we are going to increase at the top of the shell. I had to take a little break there because little man came home from school. So, now, this is where you need to know your stitch identification, or at least the most part. So this part right here is our single crochet. The double crochets on either side of those, we're going to double crochet those together. Okay, so we have one more double crochet here that we can put in. And then we're going to double crochet this stitch. And not this one, but the one next to it together. All right, so we double crochet those together. Then we'll have one more crochet here. And then we are at the top of the shell. So there should be 2 stitches on this side and 2 stitches on this side. There's going to be a shell here, and we are going to double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That is our peak for the triangle. And from now on, we know we're going to work our peaks for the next couple of rows into that shell. And then we're going to put a double crochet on this side. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to, this one, not the single crochet, and this one, we're going to double crochet together. Okay, that's 2 double crochets together. All right, let's do it again. Put a double crochet here. Now we're at the peak. We're going to put a double crochet, chain 1, a double crochet, put another double crochet here. And now we're at the part where we decrease. So see, there's almost like a Mickey Mouse head here. So here's his head, here's his ear, and here's his ear. We want to make those 2 ears into 1 stitch. So we put a half of a double crochet into that, skip his head, half of a double crochet into that, and then we double crochet them together. Now where we once had 3 stitches, we only have 1. Okay? And we're going to continue this, and because now the bottom peak is exactly like all the rest of the stitches, there's nothing special you're going to do here. You're going to treat this bottom peak exactly like you did all the rest of these shells. You can do the same thing, and you're going to repeat this row. Well, not No, not technically this row. I'll have to show you the next row. The next row is going to be slightly different. And every time you do this, this will get taller. So it'll become more pyramid-like. And there will be an extra stitch along here. So instead of 1 double crochet on either side, there'll be 2 double crochets on either side. So that's what we're doing. So we did our decrease. I'm going to put a double crochet in the next stitch. Now we're at the top of the shell. And we're going to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. We're going to put a double crochet in the next stitch. And then we're back to the Mickey Mouse head. And we're going to crochet his ears together with 2 double crochets together. Okay. A double crochet on the next side. Now we're at the top of the shell. We're going to put our increase, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. See? And you can't really see the peak real good here, but the next row we're going to change it up and it's going to, you're definitely going to see it. Okay. So we're just going to continue this. Double crochet Mickey Mouse's ears together. Put a double crochet on the other side of it. Make our peak increase, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, put a double crochet on the other side of that, and then crochet Mickey Mouse's ears together. All right, I think you guys have it. I am going to leave you to your devices. This is what it's going to look like at this point. And if you pull a little bit, you'll be able to see the peaks starting to form. But the more we decrease here and the more we increase here, we'll get more of the zigzag pattern. And I will see you at the end of this row. Oh man, that was a long row, wasn't it? It's just gonna get longer from here, but we're almost in the final stretch. So I put my top peak for this shell. I double crochet here. Decrease the Mickey Mouse ears here. Double crochet here. And 3 double crochet here. This is the last row that I'm going to show you. It could be the last row of, well, the next row that not this row I'm working on right now. This next row I'm going to show you will be the last row of the shawl, in the fact that it's a repeat. You can repeat this once, you can repeat it twice. I am going to repeat it until I run out of yarn. So I have about a half a skein left. Well, maybe less than a half a skein. I'm going to continue this final row until I'm out of yarn. Probably going to involve some yarn chicken. So this is the final repeat of the shawl. We are going to increase. So we're going to chain 3, 3. All right, there's going to be noise. Everybody's home now. So there's going to be lots of pausing. So we're going to increase in the first stitch like we have all the rest of the rows. That means we need to put 2 more double crochets where we put the chain 3. Then we are going to double crochet in the next stitch, and then double crochet in the next stitch. And then if we take a good look here, this is our decrease. So this is going to be now our Mickey Mouse head. And the 2 on either side of the decrease from the previous row is going to be our Mickey Mouse ears that we decrease by double crocheting together. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then we are going to double crochet in the next one. Now in this chain space, we're going to change it up because we're going to put 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. This is where we're really going to get those peaks are going to show. Okay, Then we're going to put a double crochet here in the next stitch. Now we're back to, this is the Mickey Mouse head, and on either side we need to make those ears touch. So we're going to double crochet those two together. Put a double crochet. This is the top of the double crochet, chain one, double crochet. Make sure you double crochet in both of those stitches. So we put a double crochet there, and then in the chain one space we're going to put 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Okay, then make sure you get that first stitch right there. Double crochet in that, and then now it's time for the 2 ears together. Skip over the decrease from the previous row. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. You are going to repeat this row. You're going to do this all the way across, and you can repeat it as many times as you want. Every row when you come up, because we put 2 increases here now, so it's 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochets. When you get back to the next row, here, I'll show you. I will reverse this so that you can see what the next row will look like. Okay. So we're going to ignore the decrease there. You're going to double crochet up the side of the peaks like that. And then you're going to go into that chain 2 space now, and you're going to put 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet. And because we're increasing here every row, the amount of double crochets down the side and up the side of the peaks is going to change. It's going to be more. So we have a double crochet here now. Double crochet here now. So whereas before, on this row, we only had 1 before we added the decrease. Now we have 2. And then we're going to do the decrease here, and then we'll put 2 double crochets, and then 2 double crochet, chain 2. You guys got this. You guys got this. It's not super difficult. See how we just pretended we were doing another row? So that's all you're going to do to finish this shawl off. Is you're going to keep turning these hills into these beautiful peaks and do several rows. Use up all your yarn. There's no sense to have yarn waste with this. Use up as much as you can. I mean, obviously, you're probably going to have some that doesn't. You're probably going to have to play a little bit of yarn chicken. When you think that you're just about out of yarn, just cut it, tie it off. You can also, at this point, add a border color and just do this for a border. So treat this same repeat row as a border. You can do a lighter color, you can do a darker color, really make it pop. For the white one, because I was using different varieties of white, I made the border in white. So see how it's just, I kept doing that repeat and it kept getting bigger and bigger. And then I added the white. And the white gives it a really beautiful border on the edge of that. You can do the same thing with this. I was thinking about actually doing like a dark purple if I so felt like it. Well, right now, we're just doing the repeat and adding the peaks. And I will see you when I run out of yarn. All right, I am all finished. I wanted to show you what I did and show you how much we worked with so that we have a better idea. Pardon the school bus that's honking in the background. So I actually did, I did 2 rows with the lilac color, and then I did 2 rows with eggplant, which is the Premier Basics. It's the eggplant. And that is what the border looks like. I had quite a bit of leftover from the lilac color. This actually made me laugh because those last rows, the peaks, add so many stitches. This was my leftover because this was not enough, and that's a pretty big ball. that was not enough to go all the way around. So I ended up doing about maybe 2/3, maybe less than 2/3, and ran out of yarn, so I had to frog back that row. And we used about a little over half of a third of the Premier Basics. I could have left this in and added the purple in, but I didn't want like a hard break in the zigzags. So that is what that looks like. So thank you so much for this tutorial. Really love working with the Premier Basics yarn. I'm very happy to have featured it. Another thing is that you will see, and I know it's hard to see because this is such a dark color, it's very gloomy outside, so the lighting in my room is not very great. The feathers will ruffle like this, and it gives such a beautiful detail to the bottom of the shawl, which you probably already saw at the beginning of this video, which I have not filmed because I haven't made this yet. So now we're going to reverse it, and I'm going to film the beginning of the video. Thank you so much for watching and joining on this tutorial. As always, if you make this beautiful Phoenix shawl, I want to see it. Post it anywhere that I am at. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, tag me. Email me, does not matter. See how we rounded the bottom? That's the peak. I want to see what you guys did. I want to see what colors you chose. I want to see what we did. Like I've always said in all of my tutorials, you can change this up. You can make it out of different yarn. You can make it out of thinner yarn. I don't know that I would make it out of thicker yarn because it would be enormous, but like you would definitely make it out of thinner yarns for a lighter weight project. All right, guys, I will see you in the next one.